Not too long ago, I posted a video on the entire life story of Jace Herondale, the love of Clary Fray's life, and one of the most important players in the Mortal Instruments. However, when I looked back on the script I'd written for the original video, I realized I'd initially left out some pretty important details from the story, as well as any opportunity to include some more direct quotes. Today, I'm bringing you a new and improved video on Jace's life as I dive into his story from the novels as well as the short stories. But, as I always do, I'm including footage from the City of Bones movie and the Shadowhunters television series to help make things more visually pleasing for you guys. Now, let's begin. Jace was born as Jonathan Christopher Herondale to Stephen and Celine Herondale, who was Stephen's second wife after he left his first wife, Amadis, the sister of Lucian Greymark, a member of Valentine Morgenstern's circle. Stephen left Amadis to marry Celine because Valentine convinced him and set them up, and this was after he became Valentine's new second-in-command after Valentine betrayed his and Lucian's parabatai bond, leaving Lucian to be slaughtered by a pack of werewolves. Although Stephen grew to love Celine in his own way, he never loved her the same way he loved Amadis. While Celine was pregnant with their son, Valentine began slipping Ethereal's blood into her food, which would mean her baby would be born with pure angel blood and a unique set of gifts, and neither Stephen nor Celine knew anything about this. Stephen eventually saw Valentine for what he was really becoming, and he planned upon leaving eventually, but he knew Valentine would plot to have him killed, so he left a letter to his son with his ex-wife, Amadis, knowing she would keep it safe for him. Stephen was eventually killed during a raid on a vampire's nest, which was deliberately set up by Valentine, and his death greatly affected his family. His mother Imogen became cold and stoic, his father Marcus died of shock, and his wife died committing suicide with the baby still in her womb, as she'd been 8 months pregnant. Valentine, who had no more contact with his pregnant ex-wife Jocelyn, and was hoping to raise a better soldier than his own demon-blooded son, Jonathan Christopher Morgenstern, decided he would cut the baby out of the dead mother's stomach, and he decided he would raise the baby as his own, even giving him the same name as his own son, and Valentine proceeded to take on the identity of Michael Wayland, the parabatai of Robert Lightwood, and he raised the baby as Jonathan Christopher Wayland. Growing up, Jace lived a good portion of his childhood in the Wayland estate, and his upbringing was both loving and harsh. Valentine was extremely strict and often beat Jace, but he also mixed it with fatherly love. Jace would go on to learn the piano, and he also became fluent in other languages. Jace always looked forward to his birthday growing up, because Valentine would give him anything he wanted. For his 5th birthday, Jace asked to take a spaghetti bath, and that was exactly what he got. Jace was also extremely good looking, even as a child. In the books, he's often described as looking leonine, with pale golden hair, an angular face, and amber eyes due to him having pure angelic blood. But despite his good looks, he was isolated strictly to Valentine growing up, meaning he had no friends or any other companions. One day, when Jace was 6 years old, Valentine brought Jace a hunting falcon and told him to tame the bird. Jace struggled, but eventually gained the bird's trust and had grown to love it. He excitedly showed this to his father, but Valentine told him he made the bird weak because he said to train it to be obedient, not to love it, and he snapped the falcon's neck. And this enforced in Jace that to love is to destroy, and to be loved is to be the one destroyed. That night, after the death of his falcon, Jace cried tearfully over the loss of his beloved pet. But after that night, he never cried again, and this hardened him emotionally, which led to Jace cutting himself off from feeling much of anything. Even so, Valentine sensed that Jace was too soft, and he knew he wouldn't be the reliable soldier he needed. Valentine eventually staged his death, entrusting his 2 closest circle members, Pangborn and Blackwell, to do so, and he had Jace witness the whole thing. This ensured Jace would get taken in by the Lightwood family, who ran the New York Institute. Having the Lightwoods as guardians assured Jace would be well looked after, and he was brought to New York on a ship full of werewolves who were smuggling Yinfin illegally into the city. Robert Lightwood had snuck aboard with Brother Zachariah to put a stop to the raid, and Jace broke out and joined the fight using Brother Zachariah's staff. Afterward, he was brought to the New York Institute, where he met his adoptive siblings, Alec, Isabel, and Max, and it was Alec whom he clicked with the most, and they eventually became each other's parapetae, or in other words, platonic soulmates. This made them closer than brothers, except Alec grew to having feelings for Jace that went beyond just brotherhood. He had a crush on Jace, which was Alec's biggest, deepest shame that he carried around for years, and Jace remained oblivious of Alec's obvious crush on him. And Maris, who provided Jace with much-needed maternal love, nicknamed him Jace after his initials, JC. While growing up with the Lightwoods, Jace displayed characteristics of not just his biological father, Stephen Herondale, but also his former foster father, Valentine. He had a very cocky attitude, a cynical, dry sense of humor, a huge hero complex, and a lot of arrogance, oftentimes having more fun breaking the rules than following them, which was a trait he got from Valentine, who instilled in him this sense of defiance. He believed himself to be good at everything, and went on to casually date different girls, including a Sealy named Kaylee, who worked as a waitress at the Shadow World restaurant Takis. For 7 years, Jace, Alec, and Izzy became a solid team, and Robert and Maris loved Jace like one of their own children. One night, in August of 2007, Jace, Alec, and Isabel went scouting for demons at the Pandemonium Club. They lured a demon into the closet, and it began spilling information that Valentine had returned. But before they could kill it, they were stalled by a girl with a sight, Clary Fray, who'd snuck in after them. Alec wrote Clary off as a mundane, but Jace sensed something special about her, and he followed her to Java Jones the next night, where she confronted him, demanding to know what was going on, and he told her he doubted that she was ordinary. He also explained to her the Nephilim saying of all the stories are true. Clary then received a call from her mother, Jocelyn, who warned her not to come home, but Clary raced home anyway, hoping to help her mom, except when she got there, Jocelyn was already missing. Clary had a run-in with a Ravener demon and killed it using the censer she'd taken from Jace. But the fight with the Ravener didn't leave Clary unscathed. She ended up suffering from severe demon poisoning, and Jace, determined to save her and also curious of whether his theory was correct or not, drew a glamour rune on her to disguise her from demons who were glamored to look like policemen. And Clary surviving this proved that she was not a mundane. She was like him, a shadow hunter. He brought her back to the Institute, where she lay in the infirmary for 3 whole days, and by the grace of the angel, she recovered. With Clary's mother being missing and there being rumors that Valentine Morgenstern had returned, Hodge Starkweather, Jace, Izzy, and Alec's tutor, agreed to help Clary find her mom, insisting upon helping out an old friend. While on their adventure, they met with Clary's neighbor, Madame Dorothea, a witch, who learned many things from her adoptive warlock mother, including tarot card reading. It was while Clary and Jace were in her home did Jace realize the Ace of Cups card had a cup that looked similar to the Mortal Cup, one of the 3 mortal instruments. After leaving Madame Dorothea's home through a portal, they found themselves outside Lucian Greymark's bookstore, who renamed himself Luke Garraway. They also ran into Simon Lewis, who much to Jace's dismay was Clary's best friend. Simon was mad at Clary for disappearing without notice, and he proceeded to call Jace a dyed blonde wannabe goth, to which Jace smugly replied,
"Oh, and for the record, my hair's naturally blonde."
They soon overheard Pangborn and Blackwell, 2 of Valentine's most trusted men, questioning Luke. It was then and there that Jace identified Pangborn and Blackwell as the same men whom he thought murdered his father. The next day, Jace took Clary to the City of Bones so the Silent Brothers could get a view inside her mind, and they discovered a name that predominantly got displayed in Clary's memories over and over again: Magnus Bane, who was the High Warlock of Brooklyn. At breakfast, the group decided they would go to a party that Magnus was hosting that night, and when they arrived back at the Institute, Jace took Clary back to her guest room. When Clary admitted to Jace how tired she was due to the lack of sleep she'd gotten the night before, Jace sarcastically told her that he would tell her a bedtime story, and he told her his story about a boy receiving a hunting falcon and the philosophy of to love is to destroy and to be loved is to be the one destroyed. And Clary realized before her fatigue hit her that Jace was referring to himself. Before they went to Magnus's party, Clary got dressed with the help of Izzy, who did her makeup and pinned her hair up into a twist with bobby pins. And when Jace saw Clary, he complimented Izzy's work before taking Clary's hair down, saying that it looked much better on her. At the party, Simon was kidnapped by a group of vampires, and Jace and Clary snuck into the Hotel d'Amour to rescue him, much to Jace's chagrin, but he went along with it anyway, because at this point, he was falling in love with Clary, and he knew that if Simon died at the hands of vampires, Clary would be left brokenhearted and she would never forgive him. Before they went to the vampire's den, Jace took Clary to a church to gather weapons and other supplies they would need, and he further explained to her how the Nephilim aren't affiliated with any particular religion, that as half-angel hybrids, they're obligated to fight all the forces of demonic evil on the planet. And Jace further told her that he considered himself an atheist. He said, "Let me put it this way. My father believed in a righteous God. Dieu vult. That was his motto, because God wills it. It was the Crusaders' motto, and they went out to battle and were slaughtered, just like my father. And when I saw him lying dead in a pool of his own blood, I knew then that I hadn't stopped believing in God. I'd just stopped believing God cared. There might be a God, Clary, and there might not, but I don't think it matters. Either way, we're on our own." During the rescue mission, Jace ended up stealing a demon motorcycle from the hotel, and together, he and Clary flew away from the Hotel d'Amour into the night. Hodge was furious with Jace for going without permission, but Jace was high off the rush of adrenaline, and he didn't care about the trouble that he was in, let alone the fact that he was physically hurt. Another instance where Jace cared very little about the rules, let alone himself. On the eve of Clary's 16th birthday, Jace invited her up to the greenhouse for a picnic of cheese sandwiches and apples, and he gifted her with a witchlight runestone. It was up in the greenhouse that he and Clary grew closer, exchanging stories of their childhoods, with Clary expressing to Jace her many insecurities, comparing herself to the tall and sexy Isabel, to which Jace explained to her that Isabel envied Clary, saying Izzy was often insecure with being taller than most boys, and that she wished she was smaller like Clary. He even called Clary beautiful, something that shocked her, and they shared a passionate kiss. Afterward, Jace walked Clary to her bedroom, and he kissed her again, saying that he never felt more awake. But Simon, who'd been in Clary's bedroom sleeping, witnessed this, and Clary, realizing how much she was hurting Simon, tried explaining that Jace had kissed her, which led to Jace thinking that the moment meant nothing to her, and he coldly shrugged her off when she tried apologizing. Eventually, Clary discovered her gift of hiding objects inside images, which left her with the realization that her mom had hidden the Mortal Cup inside the Ace of Cups card. Jace, Clary, Alec, and Izzy rode to Clary's brownstone in Simon's band van, and Clary and Jace went back to Madame Dorothea. After they retrieved the cup, it was revealed Madame Dorothea had been killed, and her body was possessed by a greater demon. The battle led to everyone getting bruised and battered, but Alex suffered the most life-threatening injuries out of everyone. Clary later apologized to Jace for what had happened to Alec, as she'd had a fight with Alec earlier and she felt terribly for how she'd spoken to him. But Jace dismissed it, claiming she'd done nothing wrong, that Alec getting hurt had been his fault, and to a small degree, it was, because Jace growing closer to Clary weakened his and Alec's parabatai bond. They then went to Hodge, showing him that they had the cup, but it led to Hodge betraying them by contacting Valentine, who portaled into the Institute. Hodge gave the cup to Valentine and knocked Jace out, and Valentine took Jace and the cup with him to Renwick's. During their time together at Renwick's, Jace learned Valentine had been the man that raised him, and Jace, hungry to reunite with the man who'd been his father, momentarily decided to side with Valentine. Clary and Luke arrived to rescue him, and it was there that Valentine told Clary and Jace that they were biologically brother and sister, and both Clary and Jace denied this heavily, not wanting it to be true, because at this point, they loved each other as much more than friends. After Luke arrived at their aid, Jace decided to turn against the man he thought to be his father, and he fought along with Luke and Clary. After the battle ended, Jace began to believe Valentine's lie about him and Clary being brother and sister. Heartbroken that he believed he was in love with his own younger sister, Jace reverted back to his old habits of distancing himself from everyone, including Izzy and Alec, whom he had the closest bond with. After a few weeks of no adult supervision, Jace, Izzy, and Alec came home after a nasty battle with demons that were supposedly extinct. Alec was furious with Jace due to them both coming home covered in mud from head to toe, and they returned to find Maris had come home with the littlest Lightwood, Max. Maris took Jace up to the library, where she proceeded to talk about how she saw how much Jace reminded her of Valentine, unable to even look at her ward, and she threw him out of the home she'd given him. This led to Izzy frantically calling Clary to help her find him. Jace then wandered to the Hunter's Moon, where he ran into members of Luke's werewolf pack. He proceeded to egg them on and start a fight when he showed indifference to the loss of one of their younger pack members. Luckily for him, Luke arrived just in time and called Clary to help him calm Jace down. Afterward, they headed back to the Institute to question Maris, who revealed the Inquisitor would be arriving to question Jace. Jace, upon meeting the Inquisitor, who unbeknownst to him was his fraternal grandmother Imogen, mouthed off to her, and as punishment, he was sent to the City of Bones to spend a night in jail in the Silent City. While there, Jace met Valentine once more, who was controlling the greater demon of fear. Valentine then revealed he slaughtered the Silent Brothers to retrieve the mortal sword, the second of the mortal instruments. Clary, Alec, and Izzy went to go and rescue him, but Imogen believed Jace conspired with Valentine to steal the mortal sword. After a long debate, it was agreed that Jace would stay at Magnus Bane's apartment. Part of the reason why Magnus agreed to this was because at this point, he was secretly dating Alec. The deaths of different downworlders led to Jace, Izzy, Clary, and Simon visiting the Seelie realm to ask questions, and Clary was tricked into eating fairy food, which meant she wouldn't be able to leave with the others. But the Seelie Queen decided to play a game with them, telling Clary that if she received a kiss from the one she most desired, she could go home, which led to Jace kissing her and freeing her, and Simon running off. Later that night, Jace and Clary fought about their feelings for one another, with Jace wanting them to still be together in secret, but Clary unwittingly blurted out that she found the idea of dating her own brother repulsive, leaving Jace hurt once more. A few hours later, Rafael Santiago arrived with a dying Simon, who'd been drained of blood, and Clary ultimately decided she would bury Simon in a Jewish cemetery so that way he could resurrect as a vampire. Eventually, Jace snuck to Valentine's ship to confront his father about his plans for the mortal instruments. Once more, Valentine offered Jace to join him, to which he declined again. After he returned and visited Clary at Luke's apartment, the Inquisitor revealed that she'd kept a tracking spell on him, and proceeded to hold him prisoner using Malachi configuration, with the plan that he would be sent to the guard the next day. Luckily for Jace, Alec arrived to help free him. Jace escaped his cage by leaping almost 30 feet up into the air to cling onto the ceiling's raptors, an incredible feat that most Nephilim are incapable of doing, which implied that Jace was gifted. Clary and Jace went to Valentine's ship to rescue Simon, as well as Maya Roberts, who'd been kidnapped by Valentine. Jace, after having learned of Clary's powerful gift to create her own runes, asked her to draw a fearless rune on him, and he went onto the ship. he found Simon dying from a slit throat, and he proceeded to feed his rival blood in order to save his life, and a battle ensued. During the battle, Jace was confronted by Imogen, who noticed the Herondale birthmark on Jace's shoulder, and she tried telling him that now she knew the truth, that Jace wasn't Valentine's son, he was Stephen Herondale's son. Imogen proceeded to sacrifice herself to save Jace from a demon, and as she died in his arms, she told her grandson weakly that his father would be proud of him, though Jace, not knowing who she was referring to, automatically assumed that Imogen was talking about Valentine. Later on, after the battle was over, it was revealed that Simon had become a daylighter, a vampire that has the ability to walk in the sunlight. Maris approached Jace and she tried reconciling with him, realizing she'd been wrong in throwing him out, and she assured him that she still cared for him as much as she cared about Isabel, Alec, and Max, even prompting Jace to remember an old French ballad called À la Clairefontaine, something she would sing to Alec and Izzy as a lullaby, and she said that she, too, sang it to him, even when he didn't realize it. After Clary and Simon broke up, Clary went to talk to Jace, except Jace told her that from now on, he would be nothing more than a brother to Clary, leaving her devastated. Unfortunately, Jace's attempts at being a brother to Clary only strained things more between them. After the Lightwoods were called to go to Alicante, Jace decided that Idris would be too dangerous for Clary, and he asked Simon to trick her into not going. Part of Jace's motivation was also for him to get himself to stop thinking about Clary. While in Alicante, Jace spent a lot of time with Alec and Izzy's childhood best friend, Aline Penhallow, and her cousin Sebastian Verlac. He even tried making out with Aline to try getting over Clary, which Clary eventually walked in on, and it led to Jace yelling at her, saying, "You're a disaster for us, Clary. You're a mundane. You'll always be one. You'll never be a shadow hunter. You don't know how to think like we do. Think about what's best for everyone. All you ever think about is yourself. But there's a war on now, or there will be, and I don't have the time or the inclination to follow around after you, trying to make sure you don't get one of us killed." This argument between Clary and Jace allowed Sebastian to get closer to Clary. He comforted her, and he offered to walk her back to Luke's sister's house, where Clary was staying. Clary eventually enlisted Jace's help to get the Book of the White from Wayland Manor, and while there, they found the angel Ethereal chained up. After Clary freed Ethereal, they saw visions of Valentine's experiments on his children, which left Jace devastated, as he now thought that for sure he had demon blood in his veins. Isabel eventually told Clary that before she came into their lives, Jace lived life half asleep. He would date girls, but it would be nothing but a quick convenience for him, and when he met Clary, it was as though he became alive, more awake than Izzy or Alec have ever seen him, and he became a happier Jace. This is probably the most important conversation between Izzy and Clary, because it revealed deep details about Jace's personality and how Clary changed him for the better in such a short time, how she helped Jace see that love doesn't make you weak, and she healed the part of his heart that had been broken by Valentine's abuse. Unbeknownst to them, Sebastian had broken the wards around Alicante and allowed for Valentine to enter with an army of demons. During the battle, Clary, Jace, and Alec broke Simon out of the guard, and they also reunited with Hodge, who pathetically gave excuses for why he betrayed their family and revealed critical information about the mortal mirror, the third of the mortal instruments. But before he could say more, Sebastian arrived and killed Hodge by stabbing him in the back, revealing he was Valentine's spy. Sebastian revealed he killed Max Lightwood, Alec and Izzy's little brother, and spoke of how sickened he was by every single one of them. Sebastian sneered at Jace and talked about how pathetic he thought Jace was, saying, "You, every second you're not panting after your own sister, you're whining on and on about how your daddy didn't love you." Well, who could blame him? Jace, angry and hurt by all that had happened, decided he would track down Sebastian and Valentine, and later that night, he slept beside Clary, wanting to spend his last moments with her before he went off on his suicide mission. Jace tracked Sebastian and Valentine to a cave outside Idris, where he overheard Sebastian and Valentine discussing their plan to summon the angel Raziel at Lake Lynn and use the wish to destroy everyone in the downworld. After a battle between them, Sebastian and Valentine revealed the truth to Jace. Sebastian's true identity was Jonathan Christopher Morgenstern, and that Jace was actually the son of the late Stephen Herondale. But before Sebastian could kill Jace, Isabel arrived to save him and avenge the death of her little brother, and Jace finished Sebastian off, saying Valentine taught him every trick he taught Sebastian. At Lake Lynn, Jace arrived to find Clary tied up and silenced with a rune by Valentine. He told Valentine that he killed Sebastian, to which Valentine responded indifferently, revealing that Sebastian had been nothing more than a pawn, and Valentine stabbed Jace, killing him and using his blood to summon the angel. But Clary managed to change the ritual runes, which caused her to become the master of summoning Raziel. And Raziel, infuriated that Valentine had tortured Ethereal and realizing Valentine's true motives, killed him. And Raziel offered Clary one wish. Clary's one wish for the angel was to resurrect Jace, which he proceeded to do. Despite all that happened, Jace still mourned Valentine's death and was confused by how much he still missed him, and he was comforted by Luke, who assured him that it was normal, that Jace was simply mourning the person he'd wanted Valentine to be so badly because he'd been desperate for family. During the festival in Angel Square, Clary and Jace reunited romantically and rekindled their dating relationship with the knowledge that they weren't brother and sister. Unfortunately, Jace and Clary's happiness was cut short after a few weeks of their dating. A month into their relationship, Jace and Clary enjoyed each other and Jace acted as her trainer. However, he began having nightmares, which always ended with him murdering Clary by either stabbing or strangling her. He ended up distancing himself from her once again, and he began using his spare time to protect Simon, who was being hunted. After Clary took a risk in hunting down a cult of a greater demon alone, Jace couldn't bear lying to her anymore, and he told her about his nightmares, and proceeded to tell her that he would get help for his recent mental health issues. He said, "I swear on the angel. To hell with that. I swear on us." Clary asked him, "Why us?" To which Jace replied, "Because there isn't anything I believe in more," and they fell asleep in each other's arms. The next morning, hoping they would find a way to make the nightmares stop, Clary and Jace visited the Silent Brothers, who informed them that after Raziel resurrected Jace, the magic from the protection ritual, which is performed on infant shadow hunters, had faded, and this left Jace extremely vulnerable to demon possession and influence. This is akin to Catholics' beliefs in infant baptism, because they believe that you are born with original sin on your soul. The Silent Brothers agreed to keep Jace in the Silent City to perform the protection ritual on him again, but in the night, Jace had a nightmare where he saw his lost little brother Max, who proceeded to give him a knife and told him to cut himself in order to be released of the demon's possession. But then, the blood was used to mark Jace with Lilith's mark. Jace woke completely under Lilith's influence, broke out of the Silent City, and went to Jocelyn and Luke's engagement party, where he kidnapped Clary and brought her to the Church of Talto, where Lilith planned to resurrect Jonathan. Lilith explained to Clary that as long as Jace lived, so shall her son. Luckily for Jace, Clary managed to cut the rune and broke its bond with him, and together they defeated Lilith. But by the end of the night, the rune on his chest had completely healed, and Jonathan compelled Jace to complete the ritual. Jace, having no control over his own mind or body, proceeded to reawaken Jonathan, who was now choosing to be known as Sebastian, and together they disappeared into the night. For weeks, Jace's state and whereabouts were unknown, leaving his family and friends immensely worried about him. He and Sebastian traveled the world together, but Jace, who still loved Clary and couldn't bear being away from her, came to Luke's apartment and asked her to join him and Sebastian. But before Clary could make a decision, Jocelyn came into the room and she screamed at the sight of Sebastian, and this led to Sebastian throwing a silver dagger at Luke when he went in to protect his fiancée, and it was revealed that if Sebastian got hurt, Jace got hurt the exact same way. Clary eventually sought Jace out, having hatched a plan with Simon to use Sealy rings to communicate in secret while she traveled with them. For a few days, Clary traveled with Jace and Sebastian, happily dating Jace as he took her through the streets of Italy while she tried gaining Sebastian's trust. Eventually, Jace's bond with Sebastian briefly severed after he got injured, and Jace revealed to Clary Sebastian's plans of using the infernal cup, a demonic version of the mortal cup, to turn shadow hunters into darkened slaves. He begged Clary to kill him so as to put an end to Sebastian's plans, but before Clary could even consider it, the twinning rune healed, and he was back under Sebastian's control. Eventually, Sebastian learned Clary had been acting as a mole, to which he tried raping her in his apartment. Clary fought back, beating him and holding a jagged piece of glass to his throat, but she couldn't bring herself to kill him, knowing that it would lead to Jace dying. When Clary and Sebastian arrived at the ritual site, Clary noticed that Jace had the exact same injuries Sebastian had gotten during her brawl with him, and Sebastian tried forcing Clary into drinking from the infernal cup after he turned immodest. Luckily for them, the shadow hunters from the New York Institute as well as the wolf pack arrived in time, and Simon threw the sword Glorious, which was filled with heavenly fire, toward Clary, who ran the blade through Jace, severing his demonic connection with Sebastian for good. Unfortunately, this led to more complications. It led to Jace's body being infused with pure heavenly fire, which meant that whenever Jace got heated with any kind of anger or extreme emotion, he would burn anyone who ever tried touching him. This meant that he and Clary couldn't have much physical contact, forcing them to remain apart again. To help him cope with it, Simon's roommate Jordan Kyle began teaching Jace how to meditate. Jace, noticing how unhappy Alec had become after his and Magnus's horrible breakup, paid Magnus a visit to try and convince Magnus to forgive Alec, which didn't help things at all in the long run. After several attacks on several institutes across the globe, including the Los Angeles Institute, the Lightwoods, Luke, Jocelyn, and Clary were all ordered to pack and go to live in Idris temporarily. There, they met the Blackthorn children, as well as their ward, Emma Carstairs, whose parents had been murdered. At the end of the Clave meeting, it was decided that they would use the heavenly fire within Jace to defeat Sebastian, but how they'd extract it from him, they didn't know yet. It was later that night that Clary and Jace took a nighttime stroll around Alicante, and Clary succeeded in kissing Jace, but it led to Jace burning handprints into her cheeks, leaving him horrified that he burned his girlfriend. The next morning, Jace took Clary to Diana Rayburn's weapons shop so that she could choose a weapon of her own, and Diana sold Clary a Morgenstern family sword, Heosphorus, for free. While getting Clary's weapon blessed, they saw the demon towers lit up, warning them of an attack, and they rushed into the portal into the impending battle even though they were told explicitly to stay behind. They fought on the battlefield at the Ottomant Citadel, where Jace fought Sebastian once more, but Sebastian stabbed Jace, causing heavenly fire to leak out of him. Brother Zachariah desperately tried healing Jace, but Jace was engulfed in flames, and Clary marked Jace with her own advanced Aratsi rune, draining her own energy severely. After Jace fully recovered from his injuries, he later on went to Amadis's house to look for Clary. When he arrived, he found Sebastian had Clary pinned against her bedroom wall, with Clary pleading for Sebastian to get off of her. Jace, still unaware that Sebastian had tried to rape his girlfriend, but putting together that there was something very wrong, demanded Sebastian get his hands off Clary and stop touching her. Sebastian moved into a speech about how he desired for Clary Clary and Jace to join him, claiming that he loved Clary the way a brother was supposed to love his sister and was convinced that he cared about her. But Jace coldly told Sebastian that Clary wasn't born with hate in her heart. It was Sebastian's actions that had made Clary hate him so much. Before Sebastian left, he swiftly kissed Jace on the cheek, a kiss Jace would later identify as the Judas kiss, since Judas the betrayer had kissed Jesus on the cheek to identify him to Pontius Pilate, which meant Jace knew that Sebastian was planning something, he just didn't know what that plan was yet. Later, Clary confessed to Jace that back in November, Sebastian had tried raping her the night he was about to make her drink from the infernal cup, and Jace furiously said that he would kill Sebastian for putting Clary through that. Sebastian then proceeded to kidnap several Downworlder representatives and Clary's mother, Jocelyn, holding them hostage in exchange for Jace and Clary. Emma informed them that Sebastian and his army were staying in the hellish dimension of Edom, and Alec did some research, which prompted our main heroes, Jace, Clary, Izzy, Simon, and Alec, to use the fairy tunnels to get there. Once in Edom, Clary created her own rune to transfer the heavenly fire out of Jace and into the Morgenstern sword, and Clary used Hiosphoras to stab Sebastian, killing him for good. However, the question at hand was how they were going to get back home. They proceeded to make a deal with Magnus's father Asmodeus, the Prince of Hell, and Simon sacrificed himself, giving up his immortality and vampirism along with his memories of the Shadow World and the others, including his own best friend, Clary. Izzy and Clary were the most devastated by Simon's sacrifice, Izzy being Simon's girlfriend and Clary being Simon's best friend, and although he didn't show it, Jace missed Simon deeply too, telling Clary that Simon had been Clary's chosen brother, her true family. After the war was over, Jace officially changed his name to Jace Herondale. At Jocelyn and Luke's wedding, he was given the Herondale family ring by Tessa Gray, and during the reception, Simon appeared, having been ascended as a shadow hunter, and he retrieved his memories with Magnus's help. Though Jace was happy to have Simon back, he continued messing with him by telling him false stories about his past life, as Simon still didn't fully remember everything. Later that year, Jace was sent to the Shadowhunter Academy to act as a guest tutor, and while there, he confessed to Simon that he was struggling with his identity as a Herondale. Sometime in 2010, Maris told Jace that she was considering retiring as the Institute head, and she asked him to take it over. He would eventually take the offer up, and he and Clary went on to run the Institute together. In 2012, during Simon and Izzy's engagement party, Jace proposed to Clary, though Clary for a time rejected it, and they were eventually called away to a mission by Robert and Maris. During this time, they learned through the Seeleys that Sebastian had a child named Ash Morgenstern with the Seelie Queen, who was spreading a blight that infected warlocks, and this led to a war between the Shadowhunters and the Fey folk. After the battle with members of the cohort, they attended a council meeting so they could elect a new consul, and Alec won the election. But the joy of Alec's victory faded when the cohort threatened mass suicide and demanded all those who did not support them leave Idris. Alec ultimately decided that he would leave, and Jace followed his parabatai. Together, Jace, Alec, and Clary founded a new government called the Clave in Exile. Under Alec's leadership, Jace and Clary hosted a crisis team in New York, trying to help rebuild. Jace planned on re-proposing to her sometime after Magnus and Alec's wedding day. At the wedding, Jace stood as Alec's Sejen, giving Alec away to Magnus. Sometime after Jace stopped playing the piano at the reception, Clary portaled them to the Institute's greenhouse, where she'd set up a picnic for them, mimicking their first date from when they were teenagers. It was there that Clary proposed to Jace by giving him a blade that had the words, "Will you marry me?" etched across it, to which Jace pulled out a pair of rings, asking her once again to marry him. which she said yes to. The pair then proceeded to discuss their future together, with Jace wanting to build a huge family, planning on having anywhere between 6 to 8 children with Clary, and they were finally able to have their first moment of peace in years. Jace Herondale was a character that truly evolved, going from a bitter young man who was convinced that the only one true love that he had in his life was himself, to becoming a gentle and carefree person as he opened his heart up to Clary and allowed her to heal him. For years, he closed himself off from loving anybody, but in many ways, Clary saved him as many times as he saved her. The passionate love between them shows the inevitability that they were made for one another, that they were meant to be soulmates. He went from a young man who had a strong case of identity crisis to finally finding himself and becoming content with who he was, as he and Clary helped each other fight the underlying darkness that resided in them, due to them not just being Valentine's experiments, but also to a degree his children. His story ended on such a positive note, and many doors are open for Clary and Jace's future, and I'm just sitting here patiently waiting for Cassie to release more information about them, about where they're at and if they ever got around to having kids yet. Thank you for watching. If you're brand new here, be sure to subscribe and ring the bell for all notifications. Also be sure to leave a like and comment down below. All links will be down below in the description per usual. God bless, happy viewing, and have a nice day. See ya!